Hello friends, welcome back. First of all, tell me where in the world you're watching my video from. The candlelight at Heathman flickered like it knew something we didn't. Aurora was laughing, really laughing. The kind of laugh that used to echo through our house before cancer hollowed it out and left only quiet rooms behind. The blue dress she wore caught the light every time she moved, and the diamond on her fingers scattered tiny constellations across the white tablecloth. She looked radiant, alive, safe, and I remember thinking, maybe everything is finally going to be okay. Portland's finest restaurant hummed, with low conversation and the delicate clink of crystal against porcelain. Outside, the city breathed in cool Pacific air. Inside, it smelled of butter, wine, and expensive perfume. The kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Kieran raised his glass. To family, he said, voice smooth as aged whiskey. And new beginnings. He had that effortless confidence. Perfect posture. Perfect smile. The kind of man who never seemed to wrinkle under pressure. He wore success like a tailored suit. 35. Well-spoken. Financial consultant. The kind of man who shook hands firmly and remembered your name. I'd wanted to like him. God help me, I tried. Aurora leaned toward me. Dad, you should see the house he found, she said, slicing into her salmon. Pearl District. Floor-to-ceiling windows. Just like you always said, natural light makes a home feel alive. She remembered that. After all these years, I nodded and smiled. But something inside me shifted uneasily. It had all happened so fast. Courtship, engagement, paperwork. So much paperwork. Kieran insisted on handling the details. Insurance updates, beneficiary changes, property transfers, to simplify things. I chalked it up to efficiency. Now, watching him across that table, I couldn't explain why my chest felt tight. Then his phone buzzed. It wasn't the sound. It was his face. The warmth drained from his expression in a blink. His jaw tightened, eyes sharpening. Not frightened, not surprised. Alert. Important business call, he said lightly. Give me 2 minutes. He kissed Aurora's forehead, smooth and affectionate. Then he stood and walked toward the entrance, weaving through tables with practiced ease. The moment he disappeared beyond the glass doors, the air changed. I felt it before I saw her. The elderly woman from the adjacent table rose slowly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'd noticed her earlier, sitting alone, watching us, not casually but intently, not envious, not curious, studying. Now she moved with surprising speed, weaving between startled waiters until she stood beside us. Up close, her hands trembled violently. Her lipstick was slightly smudged. Her eyes, God, her eyes were wide with something raw and unfiltered. Fear. Before I could react, she grabbed my hand and pressed something folded into my palm. Her grip was shockingly strong. Get your daughter out of here, she whispered. Her voice shook, but the urgency inside it was steel. Now. Aurora blinked up at her. Excuse me. The woman's gaze locked onto mine. You don't know who your daughter really married. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't theatrical. They were quiet, direct, and absolute. Ice water flooded my veins. What are you talking about? I started, but she was already stepping backward, retreating toward the exit. Leave, she breathed, before it's too late. Then she was gone. Aurora stared at me. Dad, what was that? I looked down at the folded paper in my hand. Then I looked at my daughter. Her trusting face. Her happiness. Her future sitting right there in candlelight. Every rational part of my brain screamed that this was absurd. A stranger. An old woman with a dramatic imagination. Maybe dementia. Maybe bitterness. But something primal, something older than logic, roared inside me. Danger. I looked toward the entrance. Through the glass, I could see Kieran pacing outside, phone to his ear. His back was turned. Aurora reached for her wine. Dad, you're scaring me. I leaned closer. We need to leave. She laughed nervously. What? We just ordered dessert. Aurora. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. Do you trust me? She froze. Children don't stop trusting their parents in one dramatic moment. It erodes slowly over time. But sometimes, in the space of a heartbeat, they remember who you've always been. She searched my face, and whatever she saw made her swallow. Yes. I stood immediately and threw a handful of cash onto the table. Behind her, Mounted near the restrooms was the fire alarm. 30 seconds. That's how long it took for me to decide that embarrassment was a small price to pay for survival. Sometimes you don't wait for the exit. You create it. I crossed the room calmly, as if heading to the restroom. No sudden movements. No panic. Then I pulled the alarm. The shriek that followed sliced through the restaurant like a blade. Conversation shattered. Glass clinked violently. Chairs scraped. Staff shouted instructions. Chaos bloomed instantly. Aurora jumped up. "Dad, what are you doing?" "Saving your life," I shouted back over the alarm, grabbing her hand. I hope. Smoke hadn't even appeared yet, but fear spreads faster than fire. Diners surged toward exits in controlled confusion. I pulled Aurora through the moving crowd, shielding her with my body as we pushed toward the emergency door. Behind us, through the shifting bodies, I caught sight of Kieran forcing his way inside, eyes scanning, jaw tight. He wasn't confused. He was searching for her. We burst into the cool Portland night, just as the first sirens wailed in the distance. Aurora's breathing was uneven. "Dad, what is happening?" I didn't answer immediately. Across the street, Kieran emerged from the main entrance, scanning the sidewalk frantically. His composure was cracking now. He spotted us. Our eyes met. There it was. Not concern. Not relief. Calculation. I tightened my grip on Aurora's hand. "I'm scared too," I told her quietly. "But sometimes being scared keeps you alive." We didn't wait for explanations. We didn't wait for apologies. We left. And as we drove away from that restaurant, from the candles and the champagne and the illusion of safety, I unfolded the paper, trembling in my hand. An address. Southeast Portland. And beneath it, in shaky handwriting, "Check her accounts. Check everything. They move fast once they start." The words felt like a countdown. Behind us, the fire trucks screamed into the night. Ahead of us, something far worse was waiting. And for the first time since walking my daughter down the aisle, I realized the honeymoon might have been the beginning of something much darker. Home didn't feel like home anymore. The living room lights were too bright. The air too still. Every shadow along the hallway seemed to stretch longer than it should. Aurora sat on the couch in that same blue dress, her makeup slightly smudged, her wedding ring catching the light as if mocking us. Her phone vibrated on the coffee table. "Kieran. Again. 6 missed calls already. 7. She reached for it. "Dad, I have to answer." I moved without thinking and gently caught her wrist. Not forceful, just firm enough to pause her. "Let me." Her eyes searched mine. Confusion. Fear. Loyalty, still clinging stubbornly to hope. I picked up the phone and answered. "Kieran," I said evenly. "Vernon, thank God." His voice came fast, layered with urgency. "Where's Aurora? I lost you both in the chaos. I've been calling nonstop." "She's with me." A slight pause. "Is she okay?" "She got overwhelmed," I replied. "Crowds. Noise. You know how she gets." "Of course," he said softly. "Can I talk to her?" There it was. Not concern. Verification. "She's resting," I lied. Took something to help her calm down. Another pause. Longer this time. I could hear him breathing. "I'd really like to hear her voice, Vernon." Aurora was shaking her head beside me, eyes wide, whispering no, no, no. "She's asleep," I repeated. "We'll talk in the morning." Silence stretched thin. Then, "Take care of her." The tone had changed. It wasn't affectionate anymore. It was measured. "She means everything to me." The call ended. Aurora exhaled like she'd been underwater. "What's going on?" she whispered. I unfolded the paper and handed it to her. She read it once. Then again. "Check my accounts." "Yes." Her fingers trembled as she opened her laptop. The glow from the screen painted her face pale as she logged into her bank portal. "This is insane," she murmured. "Kieran wouldn't." She stopped mid-sentence. Her pupils widened. There it was. A pending transfer. $50,000. Scheduled for the next morning. Destination account. Unfamiliar. "I didn't authorize this," she said, voice thin. "I swear I didn't." "Look deeper." She clicked frantically, navigating tabs, pulling transaction histories. Restrictions had been placed on her savings account, changes she'd never requested. Her investment portfolio showed updated beneficiaries, all time-stamped within the last week. "Dad," her voice cracked. "It says I digitally signed these." I thought about the stack of documents Kieran had dropped by after the wedding. Insurance adjustments, marriage certificate updates, routine things. He'd stood beside her, patient, reassuring. Just sign here, sweetheart. She'd trusted him. She'd signed everything. He said it was standard, she whispered. After marriage, you update beneficiaries, combine accounts. I didn't read every line. You don't read every line when you're in love. Because love is supposed to protect you from harm, not introduce it. This wasn't random, I said quietly. This was planned. She stared at the screen, her wedding ring glinting like evidence. And if that woman was telling the truth, I continued, you may not be the first. The room felt smaller. Pack a bag, I said. Her head snapped up. What? Small. Essentials. We're going to that address. She didn't move at first. If this is real, she whispered. If Kieran is... Her voice broke. We find out together, I said. But somewhere he can't find us. Upstairs, drawers opened and closed. Zippers slid. Footsteps paced. I stood at the window watching the empty street, imagining Kieran making his own calls, adjusting timelines, rerouting plans. How long before he realized his perfect schedule had been interrupted? How long before he shifted from patience to urgency? When Aurora came back down, her expression had changed. Less shock, more steel. How long have you known something was wrong? She asked. 30 minutes longer than you. We drove across the river into southeast Portland, into neighborhoods where streetlights flickered and houses leaned quietly into one another like old secrets. The address led to a small home behind chain-link fencing. The paint was faded, but the garden was meticulously tended. Every window glowed warmly, as if someone inside feared the dark. The front door opened before we knocked. You came, the elderly woman said. Up close, she looked older than she had at the restaurant. Or maybe just tired. Deep lines carved her face, but her eyes were sharp. Coming quickly, the living room hit me like a shrine. Photographs covered every surface. One young woman, same face, different years. Graduation cap, beach vacations, Christmas mornings, laughing in candid snapshots. Aurora stepped closer to one of the frames. She's beautiful. That's my daughter, the woman said softly. Rachel. She would have been 34 next month. The air thickened. What happened? I asked. She married Kieran Thorne. Aurora sank into a chair as if her knees had failed her. 3 months later, the woman continued. She was dead. The story unfolded in a monotone, so controlled it was terrifying. A boat trip on Lake Oswego. Calm water. Sudden storm, according to Kieran. Capsized vessel. Rachel couldn't swim well. Kieran was found onshore hours later, hypothermic, devastated. The grieving widower. He tried so hard to save her, the woman said flatly. She laid a manila folder across the table. Marriage certificate, insurance policy, property transfers, bank authorizations. All legitimate, she said. All legal. Aurora's hands hovered over the papers. By the time she died, the woman continued. Everything belonged to him. Grandmother's house, savings, car. Just like you, she said gently to Aurora. My blood turned to ice. How many others? I asked. She opened another folder. More photographs. More certificates. Kate Mills, car accident. Beth Cole, hiking fall. Amy Reed, overdose. Jess Fox, house fire. Mia Stone, drowning. All within months of marriage. 6 names. Rachel was number 7, she said. Aurora's breathing grew shallow. How has no one caught him? She whispered. Because they're careful, the woman replied. Different jurisdictions, different methods. And his mother. Her gaze sharpened. Barbara Thorne works for the city. Property records. She has access to official forms, stamps, databases. She makes everything look airtight. The pieces slid together with sickening precision. A family business. Murder disguised as tragedy. Legality weaponized. How long have you been tracking this? I asked. Since they buried my daughter. Her voice trembled now. Not with fear, but fury. No one listens to grieving mothers. But I kept records. Dates. Patterns. She handed me a notebook filled with meticulous notes. You're the first father who listened, she said. I closed the folder slowly. This wasn't desperation. It was systematic. Professional. We need proof, I said. Barbara keeps records, the woman replied. She has to. Too many transactions to remember. Where? Her office. City planning. Aurora looked up, something shifting behind her eyes. If we don't stop them, she whispered, they'll keep going. The room fell silent. Dawn crept gray across the windows by the time we left. Back in my kitchen, coffee sat untouched between us. You have to go back to him, I said. Aurora stared at me, as if I'd betrayed her. After everything we just learned. Especially after everything we just learned. If you disappear, I continued, he'll run. We'll lose any chance of exposing them. Her hands trembled around the mug. I don't know if I can look at him, she admitted. Pretend. You're not alone, I said. You'll never be alone. She inhaled slowly, then nodded. 20 minutes later, she stood in the hallway mirror applying concealer to hide exhaustion, practicing her smile. How do I look? She asked. Like a woman who loves her husband. The words tasted bitter. She grabbed her purse and walked out the door, to face the man who was planning her death. And somewhere across town, in a city office filled with paperwork and official seals, a mother was helping him do it. By the time the sun climbed over Portland's skyline, my daughter was sitting across from the man who intended to inherit her death. And I was preparing to break into a government building. The city planning office stood downtown like a slab of poured concrete arrogance. Brutalist architecture, sharp edges, narrow windows, gray and unwelcoming. The kind of building that swallowed complaints and filed them away under resolved. Barbara Thorne worked on the 4th floor. Deputy Director of Property Records. 15 years. 15 years of access to every transfer of ownership, every beneficiary update, every quiet shift of wealth from one name to another. 15 years to perfect forgery, so clean it became invisible. I sat in my truck across the street, watching employees drift in and out, studying the rhythm of the place the way I once studied construction sites before breaking ground. Security guard made rounds roughly every 40 minutes. Cleaning crew arrived at 10 p.m. Most importantly, the parking garage had a service entrance that remained unlocked for maintenance vehicles. I memorized the details like they were blueprints. My phone buzzed. Aurora. Coffee with Kay. Going okay so far. I exhaled slowly. Stay strong. Almost done here. But I wasn't almost done. I was just beginning. Another call came an hour later. Her voice was steady, but too steady. Dad, she said lightly. Can you pick up groceries? Kieran's making dinner tonight. Code. What do you need? I asked carefully. Well, he mentioned he has paperwork for me to sign. Insurance updates after the honeymoon. He seemed excited. The word landed wrong. Any idea what kind of paperwork? He said it's a surprise. Something to secure our future. Secure. My jaw tightened. They're moving faster than we thought, I said quietly. Don't sign anything. Smile. Stall. I could do that. When the line disconnected, I stared up at Barbara's office window. Tonight couldn't come fast enough. Aurora returned home, that evening looking like she'd run a marathon in heels. Her smile dissolved the moment the door closed. He kept watching me, she said, like he was checking for cracks. She pulled out her phone and showed me a photo she'd taken discreetly. On Kieran's desk were files, spreadsheets, names written in neat columns beside dollar amounts. One name circled in red, Aurora Kane. Beside it, $750,000. Method, TBD. Status, active. My vision blurred with rage. We're going in tonight, I said. She didn't hesitate. What do you need me to do? What you've been doing all day. I looked at her carefully. Be brave. Darkness fell heavy over Portland. By 11 p.m., the city felt submerged, streets hollow, buildings looming like silent witnesses. We parked 2 blocks away from the planning office. You sure about this? Aurora whispered as we approached the service entrance. No, I admitted, but I'm sure about what happens if we don't. The door to the parking garage was propped open by a wedge of careless indifference. We slipped inside. The air smelled of oil and damp concrete. Every footstep echoed too loud. Aurora used her phone's flashlight sparingly, slicing narrow beams through darkness. We took the stairs. Each step upward felt heavier than the last. By the 3rd floor, her breathing was uneven. What if the files are encrypted? She asked. Then I trust you to be better than they are. On the 4th floor, Barbara Thorne's office sat at the end of the hallway. Sterile frosted glass. Her name etched in gold. I pulled out a small toolkit from my jacket pocket. Since when do you know how to pick locks? Aurora whispered. College construction jobs, I murmured. You learn things. The lock clicked open with a soft surrender. Keep watch. Inside, the office smelled faintly of paper and perfume. Everything was organized with bureaucratic precision. Filing cabinets lined one wall. The desk was immaculate. Aurora slid into the chair and tapped the keyboard. Password protected, she murmured. Then she smiled faintly and pulled a USB drive from her purse. UX design teaches creative problem solving. The screen flickered. I'm in. While she navigated digital records, I attacked the filing cabinet. Drawer after drawer revealed property transfers, marriage certificates, notarized documents. Every one stamped, signed, legitimate looking. But patterns emerged. Women marrying Kieran. Women dying months later. Assets transferred seamlessly. Aurora, I said hoarsely, you need to see this. She turned the monitor toward me. A spreadsheet glowed on the screen like a trophy case. Kate Mills, $340,000, car accident. Beth Cole, $280,000, hiking fall. Amy Reed, $420,000, overdose. Jess Fox, $390,000, house fire. Mia Stone, $310,000, drowning. Rachel Williams, $450,000, boating accident. Aurora Kane, $750,000, method TBD, status active. They had stolen over $3 million. Dad, her voice trembled. There's more. A future targets folder. Photos of other women. Research notes. Income brackets. Property values. This wasn't survival. It was business expansion. I photographed physical files while Aurora copied digital records to encrypted cloud storage. Everything's backed up, she said. If something happens to us, it's still out there. That's when we heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Coming down the hallway. Aurora's eyes locked with mine. We'd forgotten the most important rule. Always plan an exit. The footsteps stopped outside the office door. The handle turned. I grabbed Aurora and pulled her behind the desk as the door opened. Expensive loafers stepped inside, and behind them, black security boots. I know you're in here, Kieran's voice said calmly. My stomach dropped. Motion sensors picked you up 20 minutes ago. Aurora's fingers dug into my hand. Looking for my wife and father-in-law, he continued conversationally. They've been acting unusual. A second voice crackled. Security guard. Should I call this in? Not yet, Frank, Kieran replied smoothly. Family matter. His shoes moved closer. In seconds he'd see us. I stood abruptly, stepping into view. You're right, I said. We're doing something foolish. Kieran smiled. It was flawless. And completely empty. Vernon, he sighed. You're making this complicated. Aurora, he called gently. Come out. We need to talk. She's not going anywhere with you. Frank stepped forward, hand near his radio. Breaking and entering is serious, Kieran said mildly. Unless Aurora comes home with her concerned husband. Aurora stood slowly, phone in her hand. I know what you are, she said. His smile flickered. You don't know anything. I know about Kate Mills, she continued. Beth Cole. All of them. The mask cracked. You're hysterical, he snapped. You were going to kill me, she said. You even wrote it down. His composure shattered. He lunged. I moved first. 25 years of hauling lumber and swinging hammers had kept my body strong. Rage made me faster. I drove my shoulder into him, slamming him sideways into Frank. Run, I shouted. Fire exit. Aurora bolted. The security guard reached for his radio. I grabbed a heavy glass paperweight from the desk and brought it down hard on Kieran's wrist as he reached for his phone. He screamed. The fire exit alarm shrieked as Aurora burst through the door. Chaos bloomed. Stop her, Kieran roared. I shoved Frank into a filing cabinet and sprinted for the stairs. For flights down. Alarms wailing. Boots pounding behind us. We burst into the parking garage just as sirens echoed faintly in the distance. Aurora fumbled with the truck door. Keys. I threw them. The stairwell door slammed open behind us. They can't get far, Kieran shouted. The engine roared to life. Tires squealed. In the rearview mirror, Kieran stood at the garage entrance. Phone pressed to his ear, fury twisting his face into something feral. They know, Aurora whispered. They know we're onto them. Good, I said, turning hard onto the empty street. Now they know what it feels like. But this wasn't over. We had evidence. They had power. And somewhere in the middle of Portland, Barbara Thorne was likely shredding paper and erasing trails. We couldn't just run. We needed witnesses. Real ones. Because predators thrive in silence. And tonight, silence was the one thing we refused to give them. We sat in the parking lot of a 24-hour diner. Engine off, neon light flickering across the windshield like a dying pulse. Aurora stared at her phone. "They're going to erase everything," she said quietly. "If Barbara's still at the office, she's destroying records right now." "She is," I replied. I could see it in my mind, the shredder chewing through paper, hard drives being wiped, phones being smashed. Predators didn't panic. They cleaned up. "We can't outrun them," Aurora whispered. "They have connections. Lawyers. Access." I looked at her. Then I looked at my own reflection in the darkened glass. "We don't outrun them," I said. "We outshine them." Her brow furrowed. "Sometimes," I continued slowly, "the safest place to hide is in plain sight." I mounted my phone on the dashboard. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Bringing witnesses." My hands trembled slightly as I opened Facebook, then Instagram, then Twitter. I positioned the camera so both of us were visible. The screen reflected back two exhausted faces. Then I pressed go live. For a moment, there was nothing. 0 viewers. Just us. I swallowed and looked directly into the lens. "My name is Vernon Kane," I said steadily. "If you're watching this, you're about to witness something that will shock you." The viewer count flickered. "We are about to expose a criminal operation that has been running in Portland for years," I continued. "My daughter married a man named Kieran Thorne 2 weeks ago. Tonight, we discovered he was planning to kill her for her inheritance." The number jumped. Aurora leaned closer into frame. "I'm Aurora Kane," she said. Her voice shook, but did not break. "We found proof he's done this to 7 other women." Comments began pouring in. "Is this real? Call the police. Share this now." I held up one of the photograph files from Barbara's office. "This woman," I said, "Barbara Thorne, Deputy Director of Property Records, has been forging documents to make these murders look legal." The viewer count surged past 800. "If something happens to us tonight," I said clearly, "you are all witnesses. Share this stream. Record it. Don't let this disappear." Aurora's hand found mine briefly under the dashboard. "Let's go," she said. We drove back to the planning office. The parking garage was nearly empty now. Police had responded to the alarm earlier, but nothing stuck. No arrests. Just reports filed. Barbara's 4th-floor office still glowed. "She's still there," Aurora murmured. "Not for long." The viewer count crossed 5,000 before we even exited the truck. We didn't sneak this time. We took the elevator. Let them see us coming. As the doors opened on the 4th floor, Barbara's office door was closed. But her voice carried faintly from inside. Rapid. Panicked. On the phone. I adjusted the camera angle and knocked. "Barbara Thorne," I called. "We need to talk." The phone conversation inside cut off abruptly. Silence. Then the door opened. Barbara stood there in a tailored suit that had lost its composure. Her hair was slightly disheveled. Shredded paper littered her desk behind her like fallen snow. "Mr. Kane," she began tightly. "You cannot just—" I held up the phone so she could see the screen. 5,842 watching live. "Say hello to Portland, Barbara," I said quietly. Her face drained of color. "You can't." Aurora stepped in a frame, holding up the photograph documents. "We found your files," she said. "Marriage certificates, death certificates, asset transfers." Comments exploded. "Call 911. Oh my God. Save this video." Barbara tried to shut the door. I pushed it open gently but firmly, keeping the camera steady. "Kate Mills," I said. "Beth Cole. Amy Reed. 7 women dead." "You're trespassing," she snapped. "This is harassment." "We're citizens exposing corruption," I replied. "And 6,000 people are watching you try to deny it." The number ticked upward. 7,300. 8,000. Barbara's composure cracked. "You have no idea what you've done," she hissed. "Oh," Aurora said softly. "We do." Footsteps echoed in the hallway. Fast. Furious. But they weren't the footsteps I expected. Janet Williams stepped into the doorway. Except she wasn't the trembling mother from southeast Portland anymore. Her back was straight. Her hand steady. 3 men in dark suits flanked her, jackets bulging at the sides. Authority radiated from her like cold light. "Well," she said calmly, surveying the scene, "you've done exactly what I needed you to do, Vernon." The viewer count surged past 10,000. Aurora's fingers tightened around my arm. "What are you talking about?" I demanded. She walked further into the office, pushing aside shredded documents with casual indifference. "Barbara," she said almost sympathetically, "did you really think your sloppy little operation could run forever?" Barbara stared at her, in confusion. "Who are you?" Janet smiled faintly. "I'm your replacement." Silence fell heavy. "You see," she continued smoothly, turning slightly so the camera captured her profile, "when I told you my daughter married Kieran, that part was true." Aurora's breath hitched. "What I didn't mention," Janet said, "is that I've been running a much more sophisticated operation for 15 years. The comments went wild. "Plot twist. This is insane. Record everything. You used us." I realized aloud. "Of course I did," she replied evenly. Barbara's little widow scheme was drawing federal attention. Sloppy staging. Predictable patterns. I needed it dismantled, quietly. She gestured toward me. An angry father exposing corruption? Perfect cover. Barbara's face twisted in horror. "You manipulated everything," she whispered. "The restaurant warning. The address. Even your break-in," Janet confirmed coolly. I simply nudged events. My stomach churned. "And Rachel?" Aurora demanded. "Your daughter?" Janet's expression didn't flinch. "I never had a daughter named Rachel." The words hit like a gunshot. "That grieving mother act," she continued. "Theater." The viewer count climbed to 12,000. "My real name," she said calmly, "is Margaret Cross." One of the men beside her shifted slightly, scanning the hallway. "You're confessing," I said slowly, holding the camera steady. "In front of 12,000 people." She glanced at the screen, and for the first time, uncertainty flickered across her eyes. "You really are clever," she murmured. Sirens began wailing faintly in the distance. Margaret's jaw tightened. "What? 10,000 witnesses," I said quietly. "You think they weren't calling 911? Barbara let out a bitter laugh. "You brilliant fool," she spat at Margaret. "You just confessed to federal crimes on live video." The sirens grew louder. Through the window, flashing red and blue lights reflected against nearby buildings. Margaret's men shifted nervously. "Boss," one muttered, "we need to go." But it was too late. The elevator dinged. Heavy boots pounded down the hallway. "Portland Police," a voice thundered. "Drop your weapons." The office erupted. One of Margaret's men drew a gun. Barbara screamed and dove behind her desk. I pulled Aurora down, shielding her with my body while keeping the phone angled outward. Gunfire cracked through the room. Shouts. Chaos. For 30 terrifying seconds, the world became noise and splintering wood. Then the elevator doors burst open fully and tactical officers flooded the office in black armor. "Drop it. Now." Weapons clattered to the floor. Margaret stood strangely calm in the center of the storm as handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "Margaret Cross," an officer announced, "you are under arrest for conspiracy, racketeering, and accessory to murder." Barbara was dragged from behind her desk, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "You're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy to commit murder, and racketeering." The live viewer count hit 15,000. Aurora slowly lifted her head. "It's over," she whispered. I helped her stand. My legs felt weak. Detective Rodriguez approached us carefully. "Mr. Kane," he said, "we'll need statements." "It's all here," Aurora replied, holding up her phone. Backed up to the cloud. Outside, news vans were already arriving. Cameras setting up. The story had outrun suppression. I turned back to the live stream one final time. 15,000 of you," I said, voice heavy but steady. "You didn't scroll past. You didn't ignore it. You called for help. You made sure they couldn't disappear." Comments flooded the screen. "Heroes. Justice. Family first." Aurora stepped closer to the camera. "Kate Mills. Beth Cole. Amy Reed. Jess Fox. Mia Stone." Her voice didn't tremble now. They didn't die in vain. As Margaret and Barbara were led away in handcuffs, I pulled Aurora into my arms. For weeks I'd been terrified of losing her. Tonight, I hadn't just saved my daughter. I had found her again. The frightened bride was gone. In her place stood a woman who had stared down predators and refused to become prey. The live stream eventually ended with over 20,000 viewers. By morning, it was national news. Kieran was arrested 3 hours later at his apartment. Margaret Cross's empire crumbled under federal investigation. Barbara Thorne's career and freedom ended in a single night. But none of that mattered as much as this. Aurora was alive, safe, breathing beside me. And sometimes, when evil hides behind charm and paperwork and polite smiles, love doesn't just fight back. It turns on the lights.